Hi, I'm Marianne Clyde.
And I'm Lorna McGill.
Welcome to the Isn't She Amazing podcast. And Lorna is going to introduce our guest today. Lorna, why don't you tell us about
Yeah,
our
we have an
guest?
amazing guest today, Stephanie Alexander. She is the CEO of Boost LLC and GovMates here in the DC area. She has had a very interesting story. She's an entrepreneur, lots of success, and she has been very true to herself as she's built her company. So, if you want to just give us a little insight into
Sure.
who you are and
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. So, as you mentioned, my name is Stephanie Alexander. I am an entrepreneur at heart. I am a recovering accounting and finance person. I used to do spreadsheets for a living. And
Amen, sister.
hey. So I grew up here in Virginia. I went to Virginia Tech. I'm a full-on Hokie, and then came up to the DMV, and that's where I've been since college. And a couple jobs in your 20s trying to figure your life out. And then what happens? I got laid off, and I fell into government contracting. And I always tell people, you are not a little girl saying, "Oh, I want to get into government contracting," but you need a job, and that's what pays the bills, especially right after 9/11. So in 2002, early 2002, who was hiring? Department of Defense contractors. And you can't walk 5 feet in the DMV without running into 50 of them, all claiming to do the same stuff. So I started with a government contractor. I worked my way up, changed jobs, became a CFO of a growing organization, and then eventually went back, got my MBA, and decided to start my own company. So I started Boost LLC 12 years ago,
Tell us
13
about
years
that.
ago.
Wow.
It's one of those things where like it feels like yesterday, but yet it feels like 50 lifetimes ago. So depending on the hour that you ask me. But I started that company kind of recognizing my love and passion for small business owners and helping them propel into the next arena, if you will. And so I was like, what were all the things that I needed when I was a CFO at this former job that I only needed partially, or I needed advice on, or I needed counsel on? And so I kind of recognizing where I had fallen or what I needed to learn, that's what I applied to Boost and was kind of like, here are the resources that people need. And so I started the organization. I was a solo person. My first year's revenue were $954.
Oh,
That's not a rounding
congratulations. You
error.
made money.
In like 3 months, right? And then eventually I just started to, I was constantly out there. I was always doing business development. I started to meet people. I started to engage with people. I went 3 years without a paycheck. My first paycheck was January 22nd, 2015, because that was the first time that we ran payroll at Boost. And I just personally watched my savings go down and watch my business checking account go up. And I kept reinvesting and just basically continuing to work towards growing the company. I set my company up differently than a lot of people. Many people have to, they are the practitioner, they do all the work themselves, and then they eventually get so busy and then they, hire one or two 1099s and then they get bigger and bigger. I deliberately did not do practitioner work. And I did that so that I could grow and scale an entire organization. I did not want it to become about how many hours I could bill in a day, what I was doing. My job as CEO is to be out there hustling new work, talking to clients, keeping people happy, hiring the right people, having good partners. And I mean, some of the best advice I can give people is get off your ass. Like, you have to get out from behind the computer. You have to stop being, scared to do things. You have to go to networking events. You have to talk to people. The CEO is the best person to sell their organization because they feel they're the most passionate about it.
Right.
And you can eventually hire business development people and sales professionals, but you are always the best person. And I see a lot of people hiding behind email and a lot of people hiding and not being willing to have hard conversations or put themselves out there to potentially be rejected. And so when you start an organization or a company, you have to recognize you're going to be rejected so many different ways and so many different flavors. And you just have to be okay with it, right? Like, it's not, you have to have the right attitude. Like, all right, well, F it, I'll try someone else, or I'll get the next one. And so I think a lot of people just kind of don't see that you've got to put yourself out there. And they will do delivery, and then all of a sudden that client will end. They'll look up and be like, oh no, I don't have a pipeline. And that's really important for folks as they're starting. I knew that I didn't want to be that. I wanted to grow a bigger organization that would have, that didn't rely on me doing work. So 12, 13 years in, Boost is still very small. We're still about 40, 45 people. So we're still small. We're not a multinational conglomerate by any sort, but we're growing. And I've created, hopefully, a culture where people want to work here. That's my biggest thing with folks is like, hey, I want you to want to be here.
Right.
And culture is everything.
So if I can ask for a second,
Sure.
how do you go about building that culture? What are the values that are important to you as a business owner, CEO? What do you build into your people?
I started with our core values, which revolve around, always pursue learning. So have a growth mindset, because I think that that's extremely important. We give out the Carol Dweck, growth mindset book to a lot of our employees, et cetera. Because I want people who are inquisitive, and I want people who want to learn and want to continue to better themselves in some way. Doesn't mean you have to go back to college. Doesn't mean you have to get your CPA or your JV or whatever, but like, I want you to want to do something, right? That's incredibly important. The other thing is honesty and trust. I think transparency is super important. You generally always know where you stand with me. I cannot BS to save my life. And people love that or they hate it, right? And so that's okay, right? If I'm not your cup of tea, that's okay too. It just means we probably shouldn't work together, and you shouldn't be in this organization. And there are people that come on board and then they realize I don't love consulting or this or that. And I think it's super important to create a culture where you can admit that you may not like something, and we try and see if it works out. And if it doesn't, it's okay to say it doesn't work out. Like, nobody failed here. It just means it didn't work out. You tried something and it didn't work. So let's try something else. Okay.
So it's just information.
Yeah. I mean,
which is a really important way to look at things.
It's just one more thing, right? Like, so, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. Cool. Like, go figure out what you want to do. Learning what you like to do and what you don't like doing is equally important. Like, what are the things that make you happy, and what are the things that you absolutely hate? You're like, don't get a job doing those things.
So you're not threatened by employees that actually want to learn and grow, and then maybe grow out of being with you.
Occasionally they will, right? And I am like, hey, do it, right? We've had some employees who have gone to work for some of our clients. Now we have a non-compete and non-hire and all the other clauses, and that's not normal. But I mean, who am I to stand in the way, right? Like, I'm kind of like, if this is what you need to do, you've got to take off. During COVID, we had many people in 2020 who were like, I got to peace out, mental health, kids, all the things, right? And so that's what it is. We're a 100% virtual organization. So as we've grown and expanded, we've grown from the DMV area to, throughout the country. And so we're extremely flexible too. And so I think that that's really important is I care less about when you're working, as long as your clients are happy and you're meeting your deliverables and you're showing up for whatever it is you're supposed to show up for. So I have lots of working parents on our team, and that just means understand the flexibility, understand that, hey, I need you to concentrate, do this. Give me a type A multitasking woman who has to get the kids at 3:30 for the bus. I am on it, right? Like those women know they like, we don't play, like, let's go, right? I'll take that all day long. I will take that in spades, because I understand for every day that there's a sick kid or something like that, there's 4 other days that you were kicking ass and taking names because that bus comes at 3:30 and you've got stuff to do, right? So I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I used to be one of those moms, so totally get it.
I mean, there is, right?
So you are like, I get them on the bus and I gotta work, and I
have no time to play, and I'm like, I have no time to play. You do this, right? Like, this is amazing. Maybe you work an hour after the kids are asleep, whatever works for your schedule. You're either a morning bird or a night out, whatever.
I remember during COVID, people would say, how do you, it's so hard, like, at work and you do laundry and you want to do this, or you're fixing. I'm like, no, like, you work. Like, that was the way I've always worked. because
Yeah, and
lot.
I mean, some people are definitely not good at virtual, right? Or at home. And I think it's all about your environment and, you know, kind of what you've set up for yourself and and what type of person you are. So there are definitely some people that I think should be in offices. There are times when I really wish we had an office just because I want to see people and I want to have conversations and do all the things.
Mhm.
But now that we're all on Zoom and Teams and all the ways all the time, like I'm like camera on, let me see. I don't care. I'm wearing yoga pants. Who cares? Right? Like
Right.
tell me what you're doing so I can see kind of so I can communicate better.
Well, if you have
Um,
yoga pants on, you've got a really nice blouse. So
Thank you.
it's all about that.
Know that, you know, this is extra fancy for today. So
We appreciate that.
you know, the extra effort. I wore a bra. Here we are.
What are you gonna do? Okay, that's my girl.
You know.
So, okay, speaking of being my girl, you've also come into some personal challenges, I think. This what you had said before we went on the air. And I'm wondering if you mind sharing how that came up in your business life, how it interrupted your business life,
Sure.
how you moved on from that. Would you talk about your breast cancer
Sure.
journey?
So 2 days before Christmas of last year,
Oh, geez.
take this as a lesson, ladies. I received word that I had breast cancer. I am 46 going on 47 years old. So I'm not old, but I'm not young. And I'm not young cancer lady, but I'm not old. Like they don't know what they're kind of like, So, first lesson for all the women listening is do not schedule your mammogram in December or January. Those are the two highest months because everybody's health insurance kicks in or kicks out, and everything is nutso in terms of scheduling. Also, when you go to get your diagnostic mammogram, which I had, I found a lump in my boob. And the way that I found a lump in my boob, and I think this is important, no one does the freaking self-exam. And if you do, God bless you, good on you. But I don't, right? Like nobody does that, right? But the way that I found it was I was putting lotion on my boobs. I was actually on a business trip, right? And I'm like, I'm lubricating, right? Like we need good skin. So I put lotion on my boob and I was like, oh, what is that? And I was like, oh, that feels like a lump. And so immediately it was like, oh shit. And then called my doctor, got in for the thing, got into the cycle. But because it was December, everything took forever. So you can imagine the fun of sitting here waiting for, you know, doctors and doing all the things and getting test results.
You're on vacation.
And everyone's on vacation. So there's an extra week built in between Christmas and New Year's where you don't get anything. So everything takes, so it took 3 or 4 weeks just to get in with the first doctor to tell me what the heck was going on.
Yikes.
So yeah. And that's we live here.
Over the holidays, you went knowing you had something.
So I had 4 weeks before the mammogram. Went to the mammogram. They tell you right then and there, or, you know, the next day, I was able to, okay, this looks suspicious. You wait for the test results to come through. And then you have to wait until you get in front of your first like real doctor. And I had to wait an extra week. So if you feel anything, if you're suspicious about anything, the keywords to ask for are diagnostic mammogram, which is a slightly more elevated. If you have really dense boobs, if you've got anything like that, that's the thing that you want to ask for from your doctor. You need a doctor's order, but that's what you want to go for.
Fast forward. Thank you.
Yeah. So again, check your boobs, put lotion on them, just make sure that, you know, no, because the first thing they ask is, well, how long has that been there? And you're like, I don't know, Susie Q. Okay. Like I just discovered it. Like, I don't know. So be aware, right? Be aware. If possible, try to schedule your annual mammogram at a different time other than December and January. Like put yourself on the routine, right? But get it like off pattern because you'll have more likely of getting in faster and seeing things and, you know, just everybody, it's just easier. And then when you can, I mean, like I said, you're going to start, like we live in an area that is filled with great resources. There are tons of good doctors in this area. There are tons of good places. And every single person has a different journey and I hate that word journey because it's so like everybody's on your journey and you're like, I didn't sign up for this BS journey. This isn't what I wanted, but it is the perfect word. As I don't have a better one, and it is perfect. I just hate it because I didn't sign up for this journey, and I wasn't down with this. So fast forward, many doctor's appointments later, I had a mastectomy on February 1st. I did it as a deep flap, which means they get you open from stem to stem here on your belly and use your belly fat to make a new boob. And so it was incredibly painful. It was, 2 to 3 months on the couch and recovering
Wow.
and dealing with all of that sort of stuff. I am incredibly blessed to have a great leadership team on both of my companies and excellent work wives who I trust with my life and I trust with my livelihood. So the minute I said, ladies, I got to peace out, I've got breast cancer, I got to do this thing, they took care of everything.
Awesome.
And so the team, if you've built a good enough team, they know what to do, right? Like just let them do their jobs. So they did their jobs. I did not worry at all. I was very blessed. I did not worry about like what was going on. I did not check email. Like I checked email for fun things because they took me off all the emails, which was actually really nice. I would, it was just kind of like they would touch base with me, but generally like, hey, you can call me all the time with gossip, but don't call me with work stuff, and that's how it was. They set up a meal train for me. We had meals for the first one. I mean, like they did all the things and it was amazing.
Wow.
So I was not where I was focused solely on my recovery and not on anything regarding work.
Wow.
I started to feel better. I started to get, because these are your babies, right? These are your companies. This is what you live for. And this is what you hopefully really love. And so I knew I was starting to get back. So I was kind of like, oh, I'm interested. Oh, okay. You can talk to me a little bit about work. And then, kind of eased into it.
How
So
wonderful that you have a
2023
team
has
that
gone
understood.
sideways.
Yeah.
So it has been a journey for sure. And not one that I do 0 stars, indeed. And I just told everybody because I was like, why would you hide it? I know there's a lot of people who are very sensitive to, sharing medical information or something like that. But I'm like, well, I'm not going to be around for a couple months. I feel like maybe my employees want to know that. And maybe the network should know I'm out a lot. So, hey, I have breast cancer. It sucks. And, people came out of the woodwork. They were incredibly supportive. They were incredibly kind. And it's just a fact of life. It kind of is just something that happened. So here we are.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that journey. That's important. And you gave some great practical advice too for the women watching, which is huge. And
Yeah.
it's kind of stuff that I think our audience really likes to know. But here you are. You mentioned that you're not just, it wasn't just one company you're juggling, but you're doing this.
Yeah, I have another company
breast
that
cancer in the middle.
There's another company called GOVMATES that I co-founded. So I have an amazing colleague, coworker and co-founder. And we started that company in 2016. So we also work in federal contracting, but more for teaming opportunities and finding teammates and technology scouting. And so that is a very small company, but it's a software company. So it's always going to be pretty small in terms of number of employees. And so I constantly weave in and out of emails and, like many women, we turn on a dime, right? Like you gotta get it done. You gotta get it done. So I go from one to the next, and it just depends on what I'm doing. And I just kind of switch hit between email boxes and conference calls.
You were energized by the activity, not overwhelmed by it.
I think it would be misleading to pretend like I don't get overwhelmed. I think that right now, as I come back from cancer, I don't have my energy levels yet. And so, but I'm a generally energetic person. And when you love what you do, when they're your companies, you love it, hate it some hours, but love it generally. And so you kind of you'll put in the work, right? Like I'm one of the idiots who will work 80 hours a week to avoid working 40 hours for somebody else. And so you just kind of are like, this is what I do. Right. And I have an extremely supportive partner. And I think that that's important in relationships, that someone who understands, who doesn't question, who doesn't second guess you, somebody who's like, oh, you've got a networking event. Okay. I've got dinner, or whatever. Like, and who gets it. And I think that's also important to have your support at home. And then you just kind of prioritize, and you're constantly reprioritizing, you're constantly problem solving, and you're just kind of, hopefully firing on all cylinders. So.
Now, did anything change for you personally after going through the diagnosis? When you reflect back, are you any different, or is there something?
I think everything is different and nothing is different. So there is a grieving process that you go through that I'm still very much in the throes of. So I just started tamoxifen, which is a 5-year cancer preventative drug. I started that on May 1st. So I'm kind of riding the side effects of tamoxifen, which essentially makes you have menopausal type side effects, insomnia, for me, hot flashes, but it's like a hot burn for the entire night. Your bones ache. For me, this is how it shows up for me. And you're just tired. And I was like, wait, I was already tired. So now I'm even more tired. That's not fair. So yeah, that's kind of, so this summer, I've affectionately said it is not hot girl summer. It is tired girl summer. And tired girl is, working reasonable hours and staying off the roads and not doing any business trips and just trying to regain my energy. There's also the emotional well-being that comes afterwards, where dude, you just had cancer. That's crazy. And so it's dealing and processing through all the stages and trying to get to the other side of it and recognizing that, this happened, and what is the next part of your life look like? What is life after cancer? And what is life, I think in some ways you're invigorated in the sense of like, I have, you have a true appreciation for time. You have a true appreciation for what you really like and what your gifts are, and what you will not put up with.
Yeah.
My tolerance is like so low these days. And so I don't think that makes you a bad human. I think that actually makes you a more in tune human. It's all in how you deal with it, right? So
Yeah.
put your big girl panties on and get back out there and figure out, what your new life looks like. And the biggest advice or piece of advice I would impart is for anybody who's having to deal with this, is that they don't tell you this in the medical community, but your life will never be the same. It will have a different normal. And so you have to kind of rectify that, because in your head, you want to go back. Like that's a sense of, I'm going to go back to my life. I'm going to reclaim my life. I'm part of my life, right? And what you didn't know in the beginning was that your life has now changed permanently. And so what is the new normal for you? And so just kind of reckoning with that.
And how has your life shifted that way as far as what's, I know you said you're not putting up with any crap. And it doesn't sound to me like you ever did, but that's just
probably not.
but it weighs your priorities, I would imagine, and helps you figure out what's important and what's not. But what is it inside of you that changed, and what is it outside of you that changed?
I think that I recognize more of my limitations, that I'm not going to get it all done on my to-do list. I never was. Who are we kidding? And now I think I'm more okay with that. I go to bed ridiculously early because I need sleep, and I prioritize sleep the highest of the pyramid. Chocolate might be second. And then I also am trying to make sure that I take care of myself. So I work out 4 or 5 times a week. I go for walks with the dog. I am trying to stay active because I want my energy, and I know I feel better when my body is moving in whatever form that is. So I put those as higher priority for me. They were always high priority, but now they're super high priority, and everything else just works its way in. And I think I'm working very hard, and I am still very much a work in progress on giving myself grace and I hold myself to a much higher standard than anyone else in the world. I feel like women can relate to this, where, you think you can do all the things and all the stuff. And I'm becoming better and more comfortable with the fact that I need more leniency, and I need more grace. And so I am trying to work very hard for this year on giving myself more grace. And I am a work in progress.
It's definitely a big gift, because I'm very similar. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
always been like the hardest on myself than anybody else.
absolutely.
It's
And I
like,
think
what's the point?
a little bit, right? Like rationally, you know it all, but like
Yeah.
still, like you can
Yeah.
tell me all these things, and I totally agree. And I'm like, yeah. But then what do you really do?
Right, right. But
And so
when you do give yourself that grace, it's
I'm
definitely
challenged by that. And so I'm really working hard at it, in terms of giving myself a little bit more leniency. It doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need, I'm not going to get it all done. I am not the world's best businesswoman, best, daughter, partner, all the rest of it. Like I'm not taking those titles. So, okay,
Well,
I'm
I
human.
really appreciate all the details you go to about juggling such a heavy load over so many years, making all those sacrifices that you had to make till just 2015 when you were finally able to pay people, and then you start a new business because it's like
Right?
I didn't have enough
I'm an
of a
idiot.
challenge. I didn't have
I'm
enough
an
of a
idiot. That's what that
challenge.
means. It's fine. I mean, hey, I question my life choices all the time. So, yeah.
Well, and we all do, but you have juggled this all very beautifully and given yourself grace, I think, throughout, even if you don't feel like you have over the time. I'm glad you're giving yourself more grace now, because I just think it makes you heal quicker. I think it makes you healthier from the inside. And I just really admire that you've been juggling a lot of balls for a lot of years and are a beautiful human being. So I'm going to ask you a question.
Sure.
As far as, one thing before we close our podcast, we ask our guest if they have one thing that you want our audience to maybe take away from the podcast, but do because of the story you have shared. What's the thing we would encourage every woman watching to actually take a step and change in her life now?
All right. So mine is going to be extremely basic, but potentially life-saving. And so therefore, I'm going to tell you to check your boobs. And I know that sounds really funny, but like I said, a practical way to do that is just put lotion on as you're putting on your everyday lotion, and make sure you understand what your normal is and when something may not be normal. And I was blessed to get it early at stage 1, completely have great prognosis, all the things. So don't become a bad statistic. Listen to your inner voice. If there's a problem, immediately call, right? I mean, no one's going to laugh at you at the mammogram and say, oh, you were just kidding, right? Like that's not a thing. If you
Right.
feel like something is different, then, you are the person that has to advocate. Sorry. Life. You are the person that has to advocate for your own health. And I think women need to be super on top of that.
Oh, thank you for sharing that,
Wow.
because that is really true. That women are so used to taking care of other people that they don't necessarily, they put themselves last on the burner. And if you don't get your sleep that you are eagerly taking, and I admire that because I'm with you on that, but that's what makes your body heal. And so you're doing the good stuff. You've been a courageous warrior through all that. And I appreciate you sharing that with our audience. So thank you.
Absolutely. And get those
Lorna.
mammograms, I mean, no reason to dread it. It's easy. Just go and get it done and know your health, know your body.
Yeah, thank you.
Excellent
Lorna,
advice.
is there anything you haven't asked Stephanie that you want to?
No, I'm just so glad that I finally have gotten to meet you after all of our correspondence via LinkedIn and online. Loved your story and love that you're such an inspiration to women out there. And I think, just as you mentioned, just with, being true to yourself and putting out your diagnosis to the public, I think that just speaks volumes for women, because so many people are afraid to do that, but you were very true to yourself and shared that story, which was, it was just awesome. I mean, I watched
thank
it.
you.
I watched it online, and I just, every time I saw you posting something, I was like, that's really pretty awesome that she's doing that.
I feel like employers, I did it for many reasons, but one of them being awareness, right? Like, uh, sadly, there's a lot of cancer. And as an employer, you don't know how to respond to it. And you don't know what your employee's going through. And you don't know what your friend's going through. And you don't know what your colleague or your sister or your wife. And so I think it's my perspective. Everybody has a different, a different road. But I think it's important to kind of understand the humanity of it. You still work with humans, and that's important to keep in
That
mind.
probably really is why it appealed, why it just like spoke to me so much, because it's true, we are just human. And so
Yeah.
many times when somebody does have a diagnosis like that, or something bad happens, or nobody knows, people tend to not talk about it.
Yeah, it's
Which is
kind of
interesting.
it's surprising to me. And what was also surprising to me is how many people came out of the woodwork with, I just had breast cancer like 10 minutes ago, or 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, or I have prostate cancer, or, my wife just had this and all this other stuff. And I always was like, how the heck did you do this by yourself and like not tell people, like, or only tell a very short, and again, not everyone is as outgoing about it. But I'm like, don't you need the support? Because I did. Like, how did you do this by yourself? That's crazy. So yeah, I feel like I do not regret at all being public about, my whole breast cancer story.
Yeah.
And I've heard from many people that it's been helpful. So I hope that it was. I continue to hope that it is when I publish things like that are like, here's what's in my mind. Again, one woman's, perspective, but hopefully it's useful to somebody.
Well, yeah, and if it's useful to one person, it's one
Yeah.
person that it was useful to. But I
And
think
one
it's
person's
useful
life
to-
could be changed.
Yeah, but I think it was useful to many more, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Well,
Thank you. Thank you so much, Stephanie. We really appreciate your joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you, audience, for sharing her story. And we'll see you on the next podcast.